Good morning, everybody. I have 9 o'clock, but as I see it, we don't have a quorum, Ellen.
That's correct. We're waiting for Trustee Ames and Trustee Kane.
I see Trustee Kane. I don't see Trustee Ames.
Not yet. We can call the meeting to order without a quorum. We would just need a quorum for the action item on tab 3.
Okay, well, let's call the meeting to order and welcome everybody to the meeting of the ASA committee. I would remind meeting participants to please have your mic muted when you're not speaking. And do you want to take the roll call now, or do you want to wait for Trustee Ames?
Why don't we take it now and we'll just add her in when we see her join?
Okay. Would you like to do that then, please, Ellen?
Certainly.
She's here. Look, she's
Oh,
here.
there she is. Perfect timing. Good morning, everyone. Trustee Alexander,
I'm here, thank you.
Trustee Kane,
Good morning. I'm here.
and Trustee Dobson won't be joining us. Trustee Ames,
Here, sorry for being late.
Trustee McMahon.
I'm present.
Trustee Martin is not able to join. Trustee Macon is not able to join, but we do have Chelsea Fortran filling in for her. And Trustee Riley,
Here.
that is our committee where we do have a quorum. We also have Roger Cates, Trustee Cates joining us. We're all set to start.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. And this will be a first for us, which is a faculty-initiated dialogue, which is on the subject of early college. And just to sort of tee us up for the discussion, I will pass it over to Vice Chancellor Placido.
And I am just going to hand the baton over to Amy. She's going to provide a quick introduction with some summaries of early college, some data, and just get us started in the discussion this morning. And then I'll chime in as we go.
Great, thank you. So my name is Amy Hubbard. I'm the Executive Director of Early College for the system level. And just in terms of a quick program summary of early college, we have 3 modalities. So students can take courses online, they can take courses on our campuses, and then students can also take courses at their high schools with overseen by their faculty members with a high school teacher that has been vetted by the academic department. We have grown significantly in the past several years since the system initiative. Some of our campuses didn't have programs. I'll use University of Maine at Farmington as an example, a really small program there that has grown by leaps and bounds. So in the past few years, we've grown significantly. And to ensure that our students don't take courses randomly and just kind of stack up credentials that may not apply when they matriculate to academic programs. Many of our institutions have enacted early college pathways, which is a set of courses, maybe 5 courses that will lead students into careers and majors to help them select their courses more purposefully. This is an initiative we also worked on with the Maine Community College System, early college partners there, just to make sure that our courses are aligned. Our benefits in Maine represent the national data. So students in our courses have a really high success rate overall, around 92%, while in the courses they take while they're in high school. They're more likely to matriculate, period, but they're also more likely to attend our institutions if they've had the early college experience, as you can see from the data that was provided. Their persistence rates are higher, as well as the graduation rates. And these statistics are consistent regardless of which modality students take. So regardless of whether they take courses online, on campus, or with their high school teacher, we still see those same high success rates. And that again reflects the national literature, which has shown no difference between the modality and student success parameters. And what that really shows is that these courses help students adapt to the norms, rigor, expectations of college, which are very different from their high schools. We have some significant challenges, as you can imagine. The one that has been a perpetual one, the one that keeps me up at night, is that we continue to have an aspirations shortfall. So aspirations is the funding model that provides funding to offset tuition for our public high school students. So the institutions waive approximately half of the tuition, and the aspirations program provides the other half. And so that has been a continuous issue. It is an issue right now. We're working with the DOE to try to find funding so that we can continue our growth and reach the students that need these programs the most, particularly our underrepresented students and students that might not really consider themselves college bound. We also have significant issues in our rural areas, in particular with finding high school teachers who are qualified. I'm sure you are aware there's a high school teacher shortage. And so we have a shortage of teachers, and we have a shortage of teachers that have the credentials that meet the requirements of our faculty member. We also have, as you can imagine, limited capacity with our faculty members. So we've had to cancel a couple of courses because the faculty member just was not able to offer that because of their course load for the upcoming year. In terms of next steps for us, we are working in earnest towards national accreditation through the National Alliance of Concurrent Enrollment Partnerships. We were working in earnest towards this accreditation standard, the standards and best practices right just before the pandemic. And so we've revamped those. We're refreshing all of our MOUs. So some of you will see some revised contracts that we'll be asking you to sign with our high schools to really outline our expectations with a focus on quality. We would rather have fewer high quality courses, particularly those offered at our high schools, than many. We're really emphasizing quality over quantity. So that's just a real quick overview. I'm happy to answer questions, and Dr. Placido, if there's anything I missed, please chime in.
We'll see how the discussion unfolds here. There's probably 1 or 2 things we'll add at the end.
So, Michael, go ahead, please.
Yes. Hi, Amy. I had a brief conversation with some faculty about early college, and the concern that was raised was not the first 3 modes, but the last mode where faculty from a high school or a teacher from a high school would be qualified to teach a course approved by the academic department. How do we assure quality over time? Because often you may make arrangements and have a conversation with a particular school and faculty, but how do we assure that over time, if there's changes, that's sort of reviewed? Or is this like once we have decided that this course would meet this early college, that it's just does it just continue on until some other period where we review?
Sure, that's a great question. I will say that, again, as I mentioned, the NASAP accreditation, one of the things that they require is evidence that there is a continued relationship with the faculty member and the high school teacher. So some of the measures that we're putting in place, we're going to be piloting this year in our online application system. It's called Explore EC. There's another side to the portal to help us with accreditation and to help with this documentation. So we're going to set the expectations that our high school teachers will upload syllabi every year, and we're going to ask the faculty that are assigned to those courses to review those syllabi. We know that this, again, challenging for faculty. We're already asking a lot of them, but it's also going to give us a way to log those interactions. So the faculty member will sign off and say, yes, this syllabus meets my expectations annually, or no, this does not. And here are the things that need to be changed so that our early college administrators can monitor that progress. In addition, we set it up to be really flexible in the portal so that if a faculty emails a teacher, we can log those points of contact. We are also required through NACEP to have site visits, and we can set the frequency of those site visits. It's a catch-22. We would love to have them annually, but knowing the faculty capacity to go into those schools annually, or they can be done by Zoom as well, is a lot to ask. So finding that, balance between how much we ask of our faculty, how much we ask of our teachers. But we're definitely working on that. So the idea is that there would be a continuous relationship between the high school teacher and the faculty member. And in instances where that cannot happen, we've made it very clear with the support of Dr. Placido that it is okay to tell those schools that we can't continue the relationship if the faculty doesn't have the capacity, we can't find another campus to take on that course, or if the high school teacher is unwilling for that level of collaboration.
So is there a role for the campus's academic council to be able to weigh in on these courses? Because as a faculty member, if we propose a new course, it has to go up to our UPCC for review and approval before it becomes a course.
Yes, the process goes through the academic department. So we have to have a willing faculty member, but it does get vetted through the academic department at each institution. And we honor whatever requirements, and this is also in NACEP. NECHI says you've got to follow NACEP, that's the standard. So whatever standards that academic department set for their teachers, so if you would hire an adjunct, and these are requirements that we would have an adjunct, we honor those. So it's really up to the academic department to determine what qualifications those teachers must meet.
Okay, thank you.
And great questions. Appreciate that, Dr. Scott. It's probably evident to everybody on the screen that is a much harder model than the other models. So why do it is a question that we sometimes are asked. I will say that it's the model I'm most excited about because it has the most potential for impact to our state and the quality of education overall. Is not forcing, but providing opportunities for our faculty to work more closely with high school teachers. You can imagine when it's a positive relationship, all the synergy and excitement and improvement that can happen between that kind of a partnership, but definitely a much harder arrangement for us to manage. And I saw William came off mute there for a second.
Actually, I just was able to join. I'm teaching a bridge program this week, and so I know I was running a few minutes late because I got them started on their activity.
Perfect. That is another form of early college.
I just wanted to add as well that in terms of the concurrent enrollment courses, which are those courses taught at the high schools, another reason why we support those is that it is the most accessible to our students. So we have agreements where students may take a course, I'll use statistics, for example, at Bonnie Eagle, where I used to teach, and that course is offered over the course of 2 trimesters instead of 1 semester. So students are able to slow the pace. The content remains the same. They still get the rigorous content, but they have the support of their teacher. It's in their supportive environment, and they have longer to learn the material. And that is most accessible for students who might not think that they are college bound. The average credits that our students attend with is 6, and that has what has been shown to have an impact. So students really only need to take 2 classes to have all of those benefits that I've mentioned.
Emily, trustee Kane.
Oh, I think Roger had his hand up before me, but I don't know.
Oh, sorry. It's an old guy. His eyes don't work.
Oh,
well.
you're perfect. I don't know. Roger, you go ahead.
You're on mute, Roger. You're on mute, Roger.
Thank you. I'm sorry, and I should defer because I'm not even a committee member. But anyway, I just wanted to know, Amy, if you could, the rough breakdown between the three modalities: online, on college campus, or at the high schools. What are the percentages of how that's being delivered?
I don't have that off the top of my head. It's roughly 60 to 70% is the concurrent enrollment. So we're ready, we're gearing up for our rush because those students enroll right about now once they return to their high schools. Our next highest would be the online courses because, again, in terms of accessibility, those are most accessible. And then the smallest percentage is on campus. But after this meeting, we have reports available in our application system, and I can provide that data for you and be more accurate.
Thanks very much.
Yep.
Trustee Kane.
Yeah, I enjoyed looking at the materials in our board packet, and particularly looks like a piece of art, actually, the flow chart of where they were enrolled for early college and where they matriculated and enrolled. That should be a poster in someone's office when we ever go back to offices fully. But my question is really on sort of I wonder what kind of survey work you do of the students, because I'm interested in sort of the motivation behind the early college. Like, are they motivated to do it to save money, right? When they get to college, are they motivated to do it to have a stronger application to college? In some cases, are they motivated to do it for, sort of academic rigor, right? Are they motivated to do it? I mean, I'm curious about that because I think that also helps us tell the story, because there certainly is an academic story here. But I also think there's a socializing people to college, and the idea of college that comes into this as well. And we might be able to learn some things if we understood that better. So I guess I'll ask that. I might have another question, but I'll start with that one.
Sure. So our early college administrators is what we call them. Anyone that works with our high school students, they work with the students one-on-one. So every application is touched by hand, and there are conversations back and forth, and we have relationships. We really are the bridge between our universities and our high schools. So we haven't surveyed the students directly. I have done that in my dissertation work, but I will speak from just knowledge of the programs, knowledge of the interaction with students, and from my dissertation. And it's all of those things that you mentioned. So students, particularly our rural schools, they don't have enough students to offer, for example, a calculus course or an honors course. So that is one of the biggest things that we hear, is that we have advanced academically ready students and the high schools can just not offer that. It's also course variety. So we have a list of all the courses that students take, and you'll be really surprised to see that it's not just your English and your psychology. Students will take set design and things that their high schools would not be able to offer. So we're able to reach a niche that wouldn't otherwise be filled. Women and gender studies, courses like that. So it's also variety. Definitely the rigor piece and building the resume. I'm always hesitant to say that students do it to save money. We haven't been able to prove that yet with the data, but what we do see is it gives students some breathing room, that if they need to switch majors, if they need to drop a course, they are still able to do that because they already have the academic momentum behind them. And then in the cases of concurrent enrollment, it's the student that is, well, I'm going to be in this class anyway. There's additional requirements to get this college credit, but it's free. I'll try it out. And then it gives them that little bit of success, and then they might consider another course. So it's all of the above. The other thing that we're adding this year, we partnered with Let's Get Ready. One of the things that we identified in our strategic plan is the need to provide more wraparound supports. And with a staff of roughly 15, and we're nearing 5,000 students, we really can't provide college counseling. So we were looking for external nonprofit partners, and we did find one, and they're going to provide mentoring services to our students. So all of our seniors this year, that are interested can apply, and it's a texting app, and they will help them with their FAFSA and help them with college deadlines and finding college. So all those pieces in addition to the courses. So anything really, our goal is that aspirational. So all of those. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but again,
Yeah.
what I see anecdotally is what was reflected in the research that I did, primarily focused on Maine community colleges.
Great. That's good. Thank you.
Can we sort of tilt this towards the faculty, because this is faculty initiated discussion, and I'd love to hear from Dr. Otto, because he's a consumer, or his children have been a consumer as well. So if you're willing to give us your opinion on early college, Dr. Otto, we appreciate it.
Sure. And it was interesting thinking about the motivation, because my kids go to a rural school here. We're in a rural area here. And I see a mixture of things. Most of the students that in their cohort that are taking early college have been planning to go to college. They're trying to save money, so they're trying to shorten it out. My daughter was one who cut a year off of college because of being able to do early college. And so in her group of classmates, there was the group that were going to college that were going to try and save money. And then just talking about the motivation there, there's also those limited resources. And so they're trying to fill in the course with something that they will find interesting. And my youngest daughter is in that position right now. She's finished all of her requirements. She's going into her senior year, and there's limited number of electives at her high school that she wants to take, either due to the teacher or the subject matter. And so then the early college is expanding the opportunities for her. And so it's almost the different population is going to choose the early college for a different reason. I see Clyde has his hand up as well.
I didn't really have too much to add. I certainly, my anecdotal evidence with students is that they see this as an opportunity to save money, and potentially I've had students as well who've cut a year off of college, and I think it's a great opportunity for the people in the state of Maine for that very reason. I know at UMF we were a little bit late to the party. I think it was a bit of a lost opportunity kind of getting going with early college. And a lot of it was driven out of concern for quality. But again, I think a lot of our faculty found we have more control over quality through early college than we do, for example, students coming from community colleges. So I don't think that was necessarily a valid concern, but it is obviously a concern. I had two questions for Amy. I know I didn't mean to turn the conversation around. The one is, Amy, if we look at that diagram, that really is a piece of work of art. You'll notice that not a high percentage of students who attend early college, say through USM, actually go to USM. Is there any correlation that you found, or any factors that contribute towards them going on to that particular institution? Because I see of all the early college we provide, a relatively small portion actually come to colleges in our institution. So that's the one question. The other question is, and I don't mean it negative, but we hear a lot of justification for early college in that the students have a higher level of success. But again, my experience with those students is that they have the highest GPAs at high school, and so they were more likely to be successful at college anyway. That doesn't mean to say they are not excited. They're super excited to take that opportunity. In fact, they can't wait to have, classes potentially at college level, at high school, because they want to be stretched, they want to grow. So maybe more like the first question, like, is there anything we could be doing to bring more students to our campuses from the early college cohort?
Sure, I can tackle both. In terms of can more be done? Always, there can be more that can be done. And I've encouraged all of the admissions teams to use the data that we have. So we have access to all of the school counselors, and those are, I would dare say, the most accurate, because they can't approve applications if they're not in our system. So we have that data information. We have all of our students, and then we also have all of their parents, because parents have to approve applications. So we do offer that information. The early college pathways that Farmington just adopted, I think, is another way, so that if you're already working towards a pathway, it's an incentive. Previously, the idea was just take a bunch of courses versus take courses in an academic pathway. If you have those 5 classes that are going to lead into the education pathway at Farmington, I think you're going to be more likely to matriculate to that institution. So it's really a partnership with the admissions folks that we need to work on. It was something that in the initial stages of our, when early college became a system initiative, that we really focused on. We provided scholarships, and then it became evident that the scholarships really didn't make the difference. And then our enrollment, it grew so quickly that we really had to focus on students and providing that support and success. So I think there is definitely, that's definitely an area that needs to, that we need to work on. In terms of your second question about students who are already academically high, of course, they're going to be, it's the students that are already going to college that we're serving. And we're definitely serving those students. I'll use the example of my own children that were already academically prepared, that were going to school. However, I think that what early college does is it provides even those students who are academically motivated a more college-like experience. And the data does show that it eases the transition. So what we can't show is what would happen if those students didn't have those courses. We can show that a little bit with some of the data when we compare the outcomes of students who don't have early college compared to students that do, and those persistence rates, that is a measure, and there is a difference there in their GPA. Their GPAs are lower. So you figure if a student's going to college, they were already going to college, but if they didn't have early college, it's not there. And then in terms of just boostering students, so we have about 40 to 50% of our students are first gen, depending on if you count first gen, whether or not parents have a bachelor's degree or an associate's degree. So we know that we are serving a high percentage of students who are first gen. So again, going back to that transition, maybe those students are academically motivated, but they are first gen and maybe don't have the tools and the social capital to prepare them as well. And that's another benefit of our program. So we're certainly serving the top, and I think we serve the top well. And that's why our focus really, we have an equity report that was linked in your material. So our focus really for upcoming initiatives is really how we can serve students that might not otherwise be considering themselves as college bound.
Trustee Riley?
Thank you. I just would like to follow up on Clyde's question a little bit more. If that large cohort of early college students are being taught at high schools by high school teachers, it sounds more like an AP model. So how exactly do we build any kind, and I appreciate that getting these young people supported into higher education of any kind is the goal of early college, that's great. But how exactly do we connect those students to the fact that they are university system supported? Do they know? How does that work if they're being taught in the high school by a high school teacher? Where does the connection to the system come clear to those students?
Sure. And I'll just briefly touch on AP since you mentioned it. The difference between early college and AP is that the students will earn credit based on their grade. They don't have to take a high stakes test at the end. So we have the AP stats overall nationally are below 50% of the students who enroll in AP courses actually get the 3 or better or 4 or better based on whatever the requirements are of that institution. So in this case, the concurrent enrollment, the success levels are much higher. The student needs to pass the course, C or better is transferable in order to get credit. In terms of connection to the university, that's another thing that we're working on. And again, that's part of the initiative with having the syllabi. So in the past, our faculty would accept syllabi as long as it was focused on content, but NACEP requires that the syllabi match the university. So the course name has to be the same, the title has to be the same, the name of the university has to be on the syllabus. And those are all things that are not there yet, but will be required starting this year. And we've got to give our folks our time. Our goal is 5 years to earn this accreditation. So it's something that we're working on, that we've recognized. And then partnering with organizations like Let's Get Ready to make that next connection, that you're not just here for a course, but we really want to encourage aspirations would be the next step. Some of our campuses also have additional programs where they bring folks to the campus. So University of Maine, for example, has a leadership institute, and those students come on campus. UMA had their flight academy. So we have had some pockets of that. And I know Farmington is planning to bring students on campus this fall for a connection. So those are definitely some initiatives that we're working on, particularly in the concurrent enrollment space. UMP has done University Day, where they bring campus students to campus as well.
Thank you. Aidan Mulroney, and Aidan, can you come on camera if you can ask a question, please?
Just to speak anecdotally about the people who I know who are early college, they are people who are highly motivated and have planned out specifically what they're trying to do. That's just the people I know who are taking advantage of this.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Scott?
Yes, Amy, what, as the early college is a program, what early efforts are there before the courses, before they take these courses, to try to get students prepped or even thinking about college? Is there an effort of reaching out to 9th, 10th, 11th graders to try to get them thinking about college? Is that a system effort, or do you just rely on the schools to make that case?
In a lot of cases, it's the partnerships that we've built with schools. So I'll use the example of Bonnie Eagle High School. When I first started, that's the school that I taught at, and it's in my district. So when we first started the initiative, 6% of Bonnie Eagle students took early college classes, and it was only seniors. And now that statistic is around 20 to 30%, depending on the semester, but it's really based on relationships with our schools. So our early college administrators will do site visits, they'll visit schools, they'll work with counselors, they'll meet with students, they have enrollment times. Sometimes if any high school invites us to their college readiness days events, then our folks will attend. And because of the system-wide effort and the collaboration with the community college system, we've actually paired up with the community colleges so that we just send a couple of folks and we don't have 7 different presentations at those events. So that's definitely something that our folks are willing to do and have done. It also depends on the school. We are also able now with our new data to be able to determine the percent of students that take courses based on where they go to school. So we know some of our high schools are underserved and some of our schools are overserved. And I do want to take a minute to introduce Jamie Whittemore. So we just added Jamie to the early college team. So we went from a department of 1 to a department of 2. And Jamie is the AP for me and early college coordinator. And Jamie, did you want to talk about the additional connection points that we have with the universities and some of the outreach to the high schools, since you were directly involved with that work?
Sure, absolutely. And thank you, Amy. It's nice to be here with you all today. Thank you for having us. I just wanted to mention also a couple additional connection points. From my experience at USM involved in early college, we were also really proactively connecting with students to be sure that they know how and when to access their college issued transcripts that they receive at the end of their semester or year-long concurrent enrollment class. I think that is a really strong, tangible piece of evidence for those students that they have completed a college level course, and that credit is transferable based on how they perform in the class. And they can take that with them sort of anywhere. As Amy mentioned, it's not a high stakes exam where you have to score a 3, 4, or 5 at the end to take that credit with you. And then we also do provide students access to campus resources throughout the academic year, regardless of whether or not they actually intend to come to campus. We do provide them access to the services on campus, like tutoring or writing center access, things like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the faculty? This is a
Looks like
faculty-led
William has his hand
discussion.
up.
Sorry?
So I will reinforce how important that communication with students doing concurrent enrollment is. Because many times I know the high school students, it's just another high school class if it's there in high school with a high school teacher. Or they get the misperception they're doing just a little bit more and that college is just a little bit different than high school. And so being able to have a few touch points through the semester to, you know, at the beginning, kind of dealing with what supports that they have is going to be important. At the end, I've always thought, you know, are we also communicating admissions process with them? It hasn't always happened, but you know, kind of saying, hey, here's that next step in as you're thinking about further stuff and how you connect with the university. But I'm glad to hear the efforts that are being taken to link the university better with those concurrent enrollment. So just to reinforce, that's an important aspect.
Thank you. Other questions from faculty members?
May I throw out? Well, yes, thank you. So one thing we haven't talked too much about, Amy opened up that our goal, I mean, overall, we're trying to provide more quality options for our students. And she mentioned that we're oftentimes trying to provide options that our K-12 partners can't provide themselves. So that's an important aspect of this. When we first sat down, Amy and I and Carol Kim 4 years ago or 5 years ago, talking about what our philosophy would be growing this over the years, one thing that's important to us is that more students who are on the fence, who are thinking about college, get an opportunity while they're sitting in high school to understand that they can do it. So everything that we've sort of adopted and implemented over the years has been with that goal in mind. And with the other goal, which is the point of my last comment here, to grow. Under our previous chancellor and state leaders really wanted to see this program grow. And after Amy took hold of the reins, we doubled and grew beyond our expectations. And now we have more student in demand than the state can fund. So I'm just saying it that bluntly. Coming into this summer, before we just, and maybe Amy can talk about the funding more in detail, but before we got some additional funds applied to this, we had enough enrollment this summer and fall to essentially use up every dollar, and actually less than the state has to fund this program. So that means that spring would be completely unfunded. So we have great partners in K-12 and Amy and Mercedes is our partner in the community college system. They all work together to try and come up with a solution. But we know this next year. We know this the year after. The money that's set aside for this is not enough if the goal is more. So, you know, Amy, I think today thoughtfully talked about and you all chimed in on quality being the core component of this. Right now, it's, I think the limit is 12. Is that right? 12 annually. We might want to think about, since we know 6 credit hours is what it takes to really have an impact on a student, that adjusting that 12 max to some lower number. So the point would be that more students get an opportunity for those 6 credits than one student gets 30 credits. And I'm bringing this up Again, it seems like this year we might have a solution, but we face this every year. And we need everyone's support to decide, is this a program that's right for us? Does it matter for students? Amy and I and others believe it really has a great positive impact for the state of Maine. But if that's not the conversation, then maybe we need to go in a different direction or help our state lawmakers go in a different direction. So Amy, do you want to add anything to that?
Sure. So there is a stakeholders group as a result of LD 1880. So that I'm working with Sam Warren and our counterpart, the community college system, as well as Mercedes Poor, who has been mentioned, to look at revising the statute. The statute is old, it's outdated. As written, it can't even really be followed because of just the way that the language is written. And so we're looking at revamping the entire statute to emphasize, as a result of the equity report, to focus on equity and focus on access for our students. There's nowhere in the statute that it actually even mentions, aside from the fact that the title is aspirations, that the idea is to encourage students who might not otherwise be college bound. So just the way that the aspirations program basically is open to any student, and that's the way it's administered. So we're getting a statewide stakeholders group together to look at the statute, hopefully make recommendations, and hopefully pass that through. And as Robert mentioned, the goal would be, I would rather serve more students fewer credits than fewer students more credits.
Anybody have any last comments or questions? I think it's a very interesting discussion. I've certainly learned a lot, and I do appreciate the faculty reps talking to their fellow faculty members and bringing that discussion forward. Seeing none, I understand there is no student rep discussion, is that correct?
Yes, sir. If any students are welcome to bring issues up at this time, but we didn't have anything in advance.
Any of the students on the call have any issues they want to raise?
No.
Silence is golden. Thank you.
Yeah, I think
And
we're all
so
set.
next we have the new academic program proposal, the Bachelor of Science Sustainable Food Systems from the University of Maine.
It's good morning. I'm Brian Olson, Associate Provost for Student Success and Strategic Initiatives at the University of Maine, and I'm standing in for Provost Vaughn this morning. So if I do something slightly out of the norm, just feel free to correct me quickly and strongly. The first proposal that we'd like to bring before you is for a new proposal of a bachelor's in science degree in sustainable food systems. This is an interdisciplinary degree that is composed entirely of courses that we already offer at the University of Maine by faculty who are already here. And it's a repackaging that allows students to sign up for a concentration in a variety of tracks, from where food would start in the ground all the way through processing and food preparation and into the human body. And it's in an area that has shown a lot of growth in job postings nationally, and it's very flexible and aligns with what we believe would be more attractive to students than some of our current bundling of these classes. And it aligns with the strategic vision and values strategic plan for the University of Maine as well. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody had on that.
Any questions?
Yes, Barbara.
Good morning. I'm going to ask or make recommendations about how these are presented to us that should not be interpreted as any opposition to this particular proposal. But in light of our emphasis and implementation of unified accreditation, I would like to see more discussion of how this proposal is accommodating of that or takes advantage of that, and reflects more of a system-wide presentation of how this program can take advantage of our policies about unified accreditation. There is a mention of that in some of these background materials, but it's really not the promotional aspect of the program that I think we need to do for everything we do in order to make clear to ourselves and the public about the value of unified accreditation. I didn't see the law school involved in this, even though there's interesting legal and statutory aspects to this issue that I would think need to be integrated here. And the second point I wanted to make, and I'm open to response or concerns about how I'm presenting this, but the second point I want to make is that it seems to be a repurposing of an existing set of criteria. In other words, we have 2 minors in this area already, and we want to elevate some of the current. Almost all these courses are currently offered. In other words, we are repurposing a current set of courses and line of approach with a new major. And I appreciate that. But again, I think also having an opportunity here to show how unified accreditation allows us to repurpose this with advantages that we would not otherwise have is my interest in how this is presented. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I will say that, so there was some mention of unified accreditation in the proposal. It's clearly not a central pillar of this proposal by any stretch in the imagination. It would, because their existing courses would experience the same advantages of any of our existing courses to unified accreditation, for the ability for students to take it from other campuses, or for us to potentially offer online courses that would fit within this in the future, that are offered from other locations, whether it's the law school or elsewhere. That's not the current bundling of courses within here, but it also doesn't prohibit anything like that from being able to happen. And in response to the fact that it is a rebundle and not something dramatically different from what we're offering currently, or the strong hope here is that we've seen growth in job ads and in the career opportunities in this economic sector. But we haven't experienced a related growth in the majors that serve those career paths at the University of Maine. And this is an effort to recognize that at least partially some of our problems in this area is a branding issue, and it's an ability to communicate to prospective students in a language that they understand, that they can get to the career paths that they have using words like sustainability, and that will allow them to find those career paths that interest them and then steer them towards areas of the economy that are growing and have a lot of job potential and potential career success for them. And so that rebranding and publication is not it's not nothing. It's exactly the types of steps that we need in order to make sure that we're taking advantage of student interests that already exist, that we're taking advantage of job sectors that are already growing. We're trying to do it in as fiscally responsible way as possible. And so that's kind of the foundation for the proposal here.
Could I just ask one more question? If we do incremental changes of this nature, is there any evaluation of majors or courses that are no longer as relevant as maybe they were 20 years ago, so that there is some indication here that we're making choices and not doing certain things, as opposed to funding new and better things that would allow the public to understand we're being efficient in the use of the funding?
Absolutely. Dr. Placido can answer that, I think.
Yes, thank you. Trustee Alexander, I love both points. That's the space I live in. This, to your second one, I'll comment on the first one in a bit, but your second point, we adopted a new process a couple of years ago. It's our annual academic portfolio review. So AAPRs, you will have a presentation later this afternoon in executive session from one of our institutions. But it's the first time the system has had a full portfolio of all of its academic programs with many. There's 25 distinct measures for each program. To include university contextual elements where they add themselves, whether they intend to grow the program, they're transforming it, maintaining it, or potentially sunsetting it. And so throughout the year, and this is a continuous cycle of improvement, we have a discussion as a group and me one-on-one with the provost on precisely what you're talking about, is looking at our programs holistically. Where could we find strengths together? Where is a program languishing? And that doesn't always mean get rid of it. It might mean we need to add some resources to it or retool it or think about it in a different way. And so that I hope with that in mind, this sort of frames what we're going to do later this afternoon. And it's your chance when the provosts come for their annual report of that review. It's your chance to ask the really pointed, difficult questions, the strategic questions, the shaping strategically of how our academic programs will grow or shrink or be transformed, as I said. So excited about that. Appreciate the transitional comment there. The first question you asked, Brian, about unified accreditation, also something that we're challenged to reimagine together, the academic leaders and myself and our teams. So when we meet as a group and a proposal comes forward, it comes forward twice. Once with an intent to plan so that all the provosts can go back and talk to their faculty and understand what the impact is, what the markets look like. And then they come back with a full proposal that is oftentimes influenced by that feedback. The intent to plan is influenced into what it becomes in the later stage. And even when we see a full proposal, the provost might have some additional thinking about what the impact of a new program would have to their programs, where they could add classes, faculty, resources. And I think this has been the most difficult change for us to deal with. So I wouldn't want to, sugarcoat this to say that we're all doing this perfectly, but it has led to some really exciting new collaborations. President Zakis and USM counterparts created a cyber program together that they wouldn't have been able to do individually, just as an example. UMPI continues to collaborate all over with UMA and Fort Kent and the rest of his colleagues. And it's in part because of our emphasis on this idea of unified and shared resources. So, and I could go on and on about that, but the difficult conversations are had at that CAOC meeting before any proposal comes to you. And often proposals don't ever make it up to this level until that's happened.
And I would add to Robert too that this proposal in particular was actually a response to that initial program review that he mentioned, where we try to look at programs that are perhaps struggling or ones that we want to sunset or grow or transform. And our food science and human nutrition programs have been on our watch list the last 2 years. And they were interesting because they have been either flat or declining. However, if you look nationally, they're growing in most of our land grant institutions across New England and in the job market nationally and locally. And so this was a highlighted program for us that through that process that Robert was describing there, where we say this is a program that doesn't appear to be performing at the level that we'd expect given the state and national data. And so it came to the forefront for transformation. And that process is resulted in this proposal now, which is our attempt to try to transform the program And then, we can think about how to rework it once we have some more kind of ground truth data from how students respond if we get approval in the first year or two.
Thank you. Other questions from the trustees? If not, I'll read the text of the proposed resolution that the Academic and Student Affairs Committee forwards this item to the consent agenda at the September 11/12/2022 Board of Trustees meeting for approval of the following resolution. That the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee and approves a Bachelor of Science in Sustainable Food Systems at the University of Maine at Arno. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yes.
Was that a vote yes? Or-
No, it's a request for further discussion, please.
Yes, go ahead.
So speaking from the Board of Trustees perspective, which is all I can bring to this, and not knowing a lot of the work that has gone into the development of this document, I am still a bit frustrated and not comfortable unless all of these kinds of proposals come to us with a definitive evaluation of the value of unified accreditation and how it has taken advantage of unified accreditation. I hear what all of you are saying about the need to upgrade and reform the programs at this particular department at the University of Maine. But I'm trying to help create a way for my level of looking at this to ask some questions and expect some response to those questions that are reflected in the documents that we are dealing with. If this document cannot meet that requirement, I'm hesitant to move forward, to be blunt. If the document can be amended to reflect more of a concern about unified accreditation and identification of how that has helped or hurt or made possible some improvement in this proposal, that's what I'm looking for. And I will be asking these kinds of questions with every proposal for new programs that I see. If I'm in the minority on that, I accept that. But I think we need to rethink how these are presented and how they're developed. And that's my concern here.
Dr. Placido, you have
Trustee Eames had her hand up.
Yes, Trustee Alexander, I hear what you're saying, but I guess I need to know whether or not this is a course it's anticipated being presented this September, so that a delay in voting on this would delay a course, and perhaps I should know better the timing, but I do not.
So at this point, because there are existing courses, any decision at this point wouldn't change the course schedule, certainly for this fall. And we haven't begun recruiting students for this major yet, obviously. And so this would be not something that we'd expect students to start in this major in next week.
Trustee Riley.
Thank you.
Thanks. I think Trustee Alexander raises an interesting point and might be a discussion for a later meeting. I think it is important to keep in mind unified accreditation is a tool and not the panacea, so it won't always be appropriate as a vehicle. But I appreciate very much that we need to know why it isn't and what's unique about a proposal, and it might make a further discussion at some later meeting.
I think, not expecting this, but I love the conversation, and it might be helpful to look at what we have just adopted as a new procedure to govern this that includes this concept of not just unified accreditation, but what does it mean to manage an academic program that has to have the input of faculty senates across the entire system. So it really, while a program approval and a discussion at the Provost Council was always arduous, it added a level of complexity that really took about a year and a half to come up with a good process for. And I'm just looking to Ellen, is it appropriate for me to share something that's on the web?
Yeah, go right ahead.
So let me just share. And this is located under our main website, so maine.edu. And if you go to data and policies and administrative practice letters, there, the section, let me go back up to that, just so we can follow along here. So we have all of our administrative practice letters now in nice compartmentalized sections. Academic affairs is section 10. Going down to program inventory, there's a new one on academic program approval. I'm doing this fast, but I just want to give you the sense. And this is what really took us quite a long time to vet this across the system with lots of stakeholder input. But it outlines essentially, I think, what you're asking. And so maybe this could be one of my board presentations for coming up. I could switch that and we could talk about this in more detail. But you can see there are detailed workflows on how these things get communicated. And I'm just going to skip down to this one. So these multi-campus academic approvals, they go through a whole cycle of approval. And what we have added to this is the Faculty Governance Council. So that is a council of faculty senate leaders from each of the institutions. When an intent to plan comes forward, the Faculty Governance Council has input, so does the provost. Then it goes on to a full proposal. The Faculty Governance Council is one of the decision makers there in terms of recommending or challenging the proposal. And then you'll see that that's the Faculty Governance Council here. They bring it back to their full senates for input. And then the CAOC has their recommendation. Then ultimately, I review all of that and make a recommendation. And sometimes it's to push the whole thing back to the beginning. And we just had one happen this summer where I had similar thinking to you. I thought there was a lot more opportunity for the resources that we already have within the system. But I had the recommendation of all of those groups behind moving it forward. I still wasn't satisfied with that. So I went out to external stakeholders, re-met with all the academic leaders, and pushed them to think a little bit harder about taking advantage of unified accreditation. And all of that process happens before you all see it. Obviously, we could build in some steps in there where you could see more of that. Certainly, I'm willing to document that more in detail so you can see those steps once you're doing the document review. For right now, I can just tell you that it went through that a very detailed collaborative process for review.
Just one more point. I am not suggesting the design of the program is deficient in any way. I am talking about how it is presented to us to allow us to understand the process by which unified accreditation had an input into the design of this. And if it did or did not, or whether the result of that aspect of this tool was that this is how we want to do it, that's fine. I defer to that kind of decision-making for sure. It was my desire to elevate that tool in its presentation to us to understand how it had an impact, pro, con, in between, or not at all, on the project we're looking at here. Thank you.
David, can I jump in? I don't know if you saw my hand was raised.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much. When I read this, I mean, I think the point about adding the lens of unified accreditation, whenever we look at these, is a great point, and certainly one that we should think about being more deliberate about as we go forward. But as I read this, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is about whether or not we are ready for, whether or not we have the pieces in place to offer this BS. And we do. And they're all on one campus from what my read of this. And they are between departments that already exist that run. This is a maximization of really cross-departmental resources. And I mean, the unified accreditation lens would be interesting, but that to me is not what this request, this resolution, which I mean, flipping through my diligent over here, is that what we are signing off on is, do we have the pieces to make this major real? Is this legitimate? Not, and therefore, if it's a major, it would be offered no differently than any other major, which would fall under unified accreditation and be subject to all of the questions that we as a board would ask. But I think my concern is whether or not it's worth holding this up when that is actually not what we're being asked to approve. We're being asked to approve whether or not this meets the standard of offering a BS at the University of Maine between, I think it's between two colleges, an interdisciplinary program, right? That and the pieces are all there. So that's where my concern is, why would we hold this up when we can still get the answer on unified accreditation related to any and all majors that are offered at the university? So that's my read of it.
And I would just add, Trustee Kane, and in addition to that, is there a market? In my evaluation of it, I would say there is. It's a better direction for them to go. And then,
well, that also seemed clear in the materials. Like this
Yeah,
is not like
right.
this is not an if we build it they might come. This is a demand that we can meet.
right. And then will it have an impact on one of our existing programs at a negative impact at one of our other programs? And I don't believe it would.
And in direct response to Trustee Alexander's comments, that this process certainly did go differently than it would have gone prior to unified accreditation, in which that there was many more conversations across campuses than would have happened. And this proposed degree is a very experiential, hands-on degree. And so there's a strong emphasis on in-person laboratory-based courses, whether that's in the lab or whether that's at the farms. And so it's a program that's intended as a residential program. It's intended as a residential program for students to be able to really gain hands-on skills in this economic sector. So it's not one where we would expect to have, for instance, a strong online component. However, unified accreditation had us engaged, especially with USM, but through all of the provosts at the Chief Academic Officers Committee, conversations about how there would be impacts on any of the system universities, and that those conversations and that double checking and proofing was certainly a result of unified accreditation, and allowed us to make sure that we weren't doing something that might have happened prior to that situation.
Chancellor.
Yes, thank you. I want to thank Trustee Alexander for bringing up these points, and but also say that we have been asking exactly that, Trustee Alexander, for the last 3 years. How is this going to impact? How do we work together? How do we bring options to campuses that don't have as full of options as say our two largest universities? So I want to applaud you for raising this issue. I think that we can, in fact, and I know Robert would be more than willing to help address in the intervening weeks and months between our meetings to make sure that we are asking the right question. But I want to be also very clear that we have turned down or sent back requests, other requests, when these are multifaceted or multi-campus offerings available. We have sent these things back to the universities to tell us specifically, how are you going to cooperate across those borders? And so I want to thank you for raising these issues. That's number one. Number two, there are pockets of opposition to doing exactly what you're proposing, Trustee Alexander. So I think you should look at us as allies in the effort to bring more things to more students, regardless of the university within our system that they are attending. And the best way to do that would be to encourage additional cooperation amongst faculty and departments at multiple universities. And so, thank you.
I don't want to cut off discussion, which is a very good discussion, but we do have a relatively full agenda. We have a motion, and we have on the floor with a proposal and a second. And I think at this stage, I'd like Ellen to take a roll call vote, please.
Certainly. Trustee Alexander.
Yes.
Trustee Kane.
Yes.
Trustee Ames.
Yes.
Trustee McMahon.
Yes.
Trustee Riley.
Yes.
The motion is carried.
Thank you. And the next item is a new academic program proposal, Master of Science in Engineering Technology, University of Maine. Again, Associate Provost Olson.
All right, so this new graduate program is a distinct new program, as most of the master's programs that we have within the system are focused on theory and advancing technology, but this program would focus on already existing advanced technology and how to apply it. It is an online degree option, an advanced online degree option, and we have many contacts already from our related undergrad programs to this proposed master's program. We have many contacts with industry, and this has been something that they have requested as well, and we will continue to work closely with them to provide hands-on experiences with today's technology and its applications. It has two concentration areas, one in surveying technology, one in electrical engineering. Both of these are areas where we have some of the strongest ties with industry in the state and in New England. And this is really pitched towards professionals who have a bachelor's degree in engineering or engineering technology who want to advance into upper level technical or management positions. And again, it's no new resources are anticipated to get this started. We do anticipate, however, that this program in particular will take very strong advantage of MESIS, the new Maine College of Engineering and Information Sciences, and it will, as an online degree program, have the option and ability for courses to be offered with any university that makes sense within this realm. But in particular, we expect that in the future there will be course offerings that occur both at the University of Maine as well as the University of Southern Maine. Pitching this initially as with existing courses and existing faculty to begin with. And so the proposal, as you can see, starts with University of Maine courses, but that's not where we expect this program to end.
Thank you. Questions?
Trustee McMahon.
Yes, President Freeman.
Thank you. I just would like to add to this that this essentially is a professional master's degree, as Brian said. But one interesting feature about it is that it will require a 6-credit internship course, very much in the spirit of these kinds of applied master's degrees, such as what the Rue Institute offers. 6-credit internship with direct work related projects. So partnerships with industry will be a piece of this. And Brian mentioned it, but when I was rereading it, I found that quite exciting.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Seeing none, let me read the proposed motion. That the Academic and Student Affairs Committee forwards this item to the consent agenda of the September 11-12-2022 Board of Trustees meeting for approval of the following resolution. that the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee and approves the Master of Science in Engineering Technology at the University of Maine at Orono. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second,
Moved by trustee Ames, seconded by. Was that Emily that seconded?
It was
Yeah.
Emily.
Okay. Ellen, could you take a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Alexander,
Yes.
trustee Kane,
Yes.
trustee Ames,
yes.
trustee McMahon,
Yes.
and trustee Riley.
Yes.
The motion is carried.
Thank you. The next agenda item is a new academic center proposal, USM Scontress Center, with a USM President Edmondson. And let me welcome President Edmondson to her first meeting of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee.
Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be here. You have the proposal in front of you for the Scontress Center, and I think I will ask Adam Tuchinski in his role as interim provost to speak directly to that. I've been brought up to speed on it, but his knowledge of it is much deeper than mine at this point.
Thank you, President Edmondson, and to echo Brian Olson, I am also new to this committee, so if I break any rules, please mute me. We only have 10 minutes, and this proposal emerged from a collaboration between the prior administration at USM, union leadership in the state, and ultimately legislatures in the state, and it was funded at $500,000. It's also, I thought Trustee Alexander's point is a really good one, so I want to foreground the collaboration that took place. So the plan for this center emerged in collaboration with the University of Maine's Bureau of Labor Education. $100,000 of the funding that was appropriated will be sent to the Bureau of Labor Administration, Labor Education at the University of Maine. There's both collaboration and differentiation. We are going to have parallel roles serving distinct regions within the state, with the USM Center largely serving the southern portion of the state, while the University of Maine will serve the northern portion of the state. And we'll also collaborate on programming where appropriate. And we're even considering mixing boards with one another so we stay abreast as these projects emerge over time, so that we understand what we're doing and find places to collaborate on an ongoing basis. What makes the USM or the Scontress Center a little bit different is that it's embarking upon some more academic partnerships with the Labor Studies program at the University of Southern Maine. It will partner with local organizations like Portland Adult Ed, which are resources and particularly for the new Mainer population in this part of the country, this part of the state. We'll do technical education, much like University of Maine's program, but it's also going to conduct research, do oral history, and bring in academic leaders from around the country. And we hope it's a center of broad civic education for the working people of this region as well. So thank you for your consideration.
Questions, Dr. Casino?
I just wanted to make one comment. This process is a bit backwards. We had a really excellent, excited faculty member create some buzz with our state leaders, and was able to get them to approve this prior to you all approving it. So they have essentially approved the center and funded it in advance of this approval. I know it's out of sequence, but everyone was trying to do what they believed was right. So yes, we are seeking an approval after the fact.
Trustee Alexander?
That's helpful, and I appreciate the situation with regard to how this came about. It is the the language about the purpose of the center is very clearly oriented to educating new entrants to the working world with labor union related rights and privileges and remedies and responsibilities. And my concern, or not a concern, my question is that union organizing at traditionally un-union organized businesses is a front page news in our state at several locations. And I'm wondering if the University of Southern Maine and the Scontra Center authorities have considered the potential problem with respect to interacting with people who are engaged in a current effort to unionize a particular business, and the association with the University of Maine system in being portrayed as helping to make that happen. Is there a PR or a public relations aspect to this that gives concern to any of the folks involved here?
Trustee Alexander, I think that's a great question, and it might be one that President Farini Mundi or Associate Provost Olson might want to answer, since we're following in the path of the Maine's BLE. But it was a question that I asked just because with a new president coming on board, I don't want the first issue that she faces to be exploding on the front page of the newspaper. And so this organization does not do labor organizing. It doesn't teach students how to do labor organizing. It brings issues that impact working people to the fore. I think in the model that we are thinking of is we have a soft-funded small business development center, which provides emerging entrepreneurs with resources and advice as they develop. But from what I understand, the bargaining units and the unions actually want to do that kind of education on their own, and they don't turn that kind of thing over to the university system. And I don't think that issue has really impacted University of Maine's BLE, but I'm not as familiar with the history there.
I can jump in a little bit on it. I mean, and actually I wish Mike Michaud was on this call because he's been around it a long time. But what I can say is what Adam just said is exactly right. It's really about leadership training and growth. And I will say the Bureau of Labor Ed here at the University of Maine draws workers from all across the state, from all different backgrounds, from all different kinds of businesses and sizes of businesses, everything from smaller regionally based to larger like Bath Iron Works. And of course, in the heyday, the large number of paper mills all across the state that certainly ran the full spectrum of type of business, type of worker expertise, and quite frankly, political spectrum. And so that was certainly been mine. And then I would say from a legislative perspective, at least when I was in the legislature, and Roger may know differently, but the Labor Committee, which has had a name change in the last 15 years as well, would use the research from the Bureau of Labor Education to help inform conversations about workforce and workforce needs. And it was not in any way partisan, political, nor was it focused on how to organize, whether to organize, or who to organize with, and that because that would also be illegal.
Trustee Ames had a hand up. Would you allow President Farini Mundi to go first? Because I believe she may be answering the current question.
I suspect she will be. Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you,
President Farini Mundi.
Thank you, Trustee Kane did a perfect job. I would just add to this that Charles Contras, whose name would be attached to the new center, spent his career at the University of Maine, and I think was key in establishing this view that the research, teaching, and service provided by the center is about informing, providing knowledge, providing best current understandings of the wide field of labor relations, but also staying away from advising in particular directions for particular organizations. And that's an issue, of course, that we face across the entire University of Maine and our system, indeed, as our researchers are engaged in research on topics that are also very politically sensitive. So, so there's a lot of experience here at UMaine, at least, and I suspect at USM as well, in watching what that line is and worrying if we start to get too close to crossing it, and then working properly with the press to remind them of research-informed policy and practice being a part of what universities are able to provide.
Thank you. Trustee Ames?
My questions have been answered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Alexander, you have your hand up. Do you have another question? No, she doesn't. If there are no further questions,
David, can I?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Roger Cates here. I'm not familiar with the history of this. So this was done by legislative appropriation. Could someone take us through the history of how this came to be?
Dr.
I can.
Thank you.
I was going to say, we either need Mike Michaud or is Ryan Lowe still here?
Yeah, this was a bill. I don't think Sam Warren's on here. This is a bill that came from Speaker's office, worked its way through the process, ultimately was passed, and then funded off the appropriations table last session.
Does that answer your question, Roger?
But yeah, again, I wish I'd done my homework a little bit better. Was this a partisan bill? Was it straight party lines? Was it bipartisan? Does anybody know that?
I don't believe that's the case, but let me, we'll check on that really quickly and can get back to you. But I don't recall this being a huge political issue. We had the experience, as has been noted a couple of times, at the University of Maine to compare it to. So I don't believe that's the case, but I know Sam is at least listening, so maybe she can let me know that. But again, I don't believe that was the case.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
If you have that answer, Ryan, can you put it in the chat for everybody? Thank you.
Let me just say this, Sam's upstairs in another meeting, so I'm going to run up there and see if I can get an answer to that question.
I just texted her, sir.
Okay.
So the text of the proposed resolution that the Academic and Student Affairs Committee forwards this item to the consent agenda at the September 11-12, 2022 Board of Trustees meeting for approval of the following resolution: that the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee and approves the Scontress Centre at the University of Southern Maine at Portland. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Kane. Will we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Trustee Riley. Any further discussion? Seeing none on either screen, could Ellen please take the roll call vote?
Trustee Alexander,
Yes.
Trustee Kane,
Yes.
Trustee Ames,
Yes.
Trustee McMahon,
Yes.
Trustee Riley.
Yes.
The motion is carried.
Thank you. You may have seen the answer to the question in the chat. The next item is proposed changes to Board Policy 301.3 U.S. admission. President Edmondson.
Yes, thank you, Trustee McMahon. The University of Southern Maine embarked on their current strategic plan, which is for the years 2020 to 2025. And once that plan was in place, they spent a year working on a new mission statement. And I will ask Interim Provost Adam Tuchinski to weigh in on this, but I did want to give you my perspective as an incoming president. I felt that the work they did on the mission statement was very thorough. we're starting the third year of a 5-year plan, and my expectation is that as this year it becomes complete, we will begin planning for our next strategic planning cycle, which will incorporate the recommendations and priorities that the Huron Group is putting in place for the University of Maine system. And so we will be taking those into account. But I feel this mission statement reflects well on the mission of the University of Southern Maine. And I was pleased to read the statement and to put my support behind it. And so, Provost Tuchinski, if you have some further context that you would like to provide to this group, please go ahead.
Thank you, President Edmondson. I don't have a lot to add. I was on the committee that helped draft the earlier mission statement, but ultimately the USM community concluded that the mission statement, the prior mission statement, was too long and too focused almost entirely upon faculty and the academic programs. And this mission statement, which was brought about through discussion with the community, brings together our service promise, which focuses on students, and an academic vision that brings together our commitment to research and inquiry, relationship-rich education, and community collaboration. And those two foundational documents come together in this more succinct mission. So thank you for your consideration.
Are there any questions?
I just had one question. I want to say, I thought this was, I love a shorter mission statements. I thought this was great, but I also, I was actually surprised that, and it seems like the faculty senate signed off on it, that like the word faculty and teaching didn't make it into the final cut. And, which is fine. I mean, they've all signed off, so I'm on board. I just didn't know if there was anything to that, or like you wanted to share beyond what you already shared around sort of why you've summarized. I like the new mission. I just was sort of surprised that fell out completely.
Trustee Kay and I share your surprise that almost everything provokes controversy at a university. You know, I don't know if the—
And that being said, I do not want to upset any apple cart support. So let's get this thing voted on and move it through.
Yes.
But I was like, wow, I really like it, but I didn't know if there was some story or information or other conversation. As the chair of the strategic planning committee, I'm like, I can't wait to look at all of these things. This is exciting. I love this. But if there's not anything to say, then we can leave it alone and move it on. I'll make the motion if you want.
We don't need a motion, apparently. This is for information.
Great.
So no further questions or comments. Next item on the agenda is the enrollment update. Dr. Placido.
Thank you, sir. I will bring up my reports. I will say in short that that enrollment coming into the fall is lower than we projected for sure. When we do our projections almost a year and a half ago for this coming fall, a lot of what is considered is fairly consistent data. So it's things like, what is the percent of high school graduates that go on to college? And what percent go to the system, for example. It's GDP, CPI, it's a number of external factors. And while CPI, the Consumer Price Index, does raise every year, not by the extraordinary amounts that we're all experiencing. So while our model showed 2 to 4% down for most institutions in advance, that is not where we're at nationally. So this is not just a Maine issue for sure. But I will share my screen. And I do want to make sure before I go into these that we, Emily, did you have a question before I get started? Or okay, that I'm not losing anybody on this. So we have a dashboard that's online. It's updated as frequently as the data changes. So our application and enrollment watch are updated every morning, as an example. The other ones are updated as the semester census date or something like that rolls around. But these two reports, you can follow at any point and see the change over time. So starting with our story and applications, and I'll go to total applications. So just want to be clear what these graphs are telling us all. We start to take applications the year before, 365 days before the start of a semester. And as we get applications in, these graphs grow. So these are total applications being received over that year period. The colored lines are prior years, and the black line is current. And that's kind of consistent through all of these graphs. So when you look at this, the point of doing it in this graphical way, without looking at the details of the data, you can visually see what the trend is looking like at any point along our journey in the year. So last year, when we started taking applications, you can see as fall started to pick up, we're in October now, and it accelerates fast. So by January, you can see we got a lot of our applications, a good percentage of our applications. And so when we're looking at our black line along the way, it gives us a really good sense of how we're doing in advance. So as predictive as you can kind of be in these things. And you can see that we spent a lot of time in the high schools, spent money on advertising, really getting people interested in our schools. We got lots of applications in, and we're, as a point in time right now, currently, we are 5% ahead of where we were in the previous year, and you can see the other years there. So in August of 2018, we were 17% ahead of this particular year. So in terms of total apps, did a great job, although there's, since this was so different than any of the other measures, we have been studying why this might be, and we might have some answers there, which I'll share at a future meeting. So we track the applications as they go through a funnel. So we have interested students, then we have students who've applied, then we have students who've sent in all their materials, so they've completed their app, that we have students, then that funnel gets lower and lower. We have students who then are admitted, and then students who tell us that they're going to come. And that ends in, and that's what all these tabs are. So you can see the admitted pattern, then you can see net matriculation. So that is a student who has given us money to say they're coming here. So that's a pretty serious commitment in our processes. You can see generally the colored lines follow a trend. So, it slopes up really rapidly, and then it sort of tapers off. So once you kind of get to this point in the cycle, that's kind of going to be what your outcomes are, and that's what we're seeing here. And so in terms of new students who have applied, we're down quite a bit, 10% new students from last year. Notice that we're only 4% down from the year prior. So A, this is a COVID impact, and B, last year, we implemented a number of things that elevated our freshman class to the highest it had ever been. So that is a bump in number to begin with. So we're kind of looking at pre-COVID, we're really looking at what would be normal, that pre-COVID, the 2020 or 2019 as comparisons, because last year was such an anomaly. So that's where we are on applications, and I'll switch to, by the way, if you go in here at any of these, you can see all our universities. If you hover over any of their data points, here's the current year, 2022. You can hover over that and see their individual net changes as well. Okay. And also note that on matriculation, UMA is not selected by default because they didn't do payment for matriculation in the past. So we keep them out. Let me show you just what that looks like. so that it's only been 2 years of them starting to do the matriculation payment. They used to just let students come without a matriculation deposit. So they started taking the deposit, and you can see that they're trending pretty well from last year when they started their program. In fact, up. So switching over to enrollment. There's this tab here gives you head count. I prefer to look at credit hours because credit hours is, as David says, it's credit hours times tuition, and you get the impact to visually impact to your finances. So you can see down quite a bit, 7 to 8%, if you which year, depending on which year you really want to concentrate on there. When we're looking at this for next year, you can understand how early in the cycle we understood there was going to be a problem, and been obviously reporting that to you. Again, with this chart, you can look at each one of our institutions where they are. You'll note, for example, UMPI is not everyone is down. Presque Isle is doing very well with their new innovative CBE and some other accelerated programs that they've implemented, and their collaborations are doing really well. If you want to get more detailed in this, you can filter this by institution. You can say undergrad and graduate. You can even look at the residency. So you can look at in-state and out of state. I'll just do Canadian real quick here. I did want to show this particular one because last year, even with the border closed, this is Canadian students. You all adopted, I think 3 years ago now, a tuition policy, or allowed us to adopt a tuition policy where Canadian students could get an in-state rate. We have many of our students who live just a few hundred yards across a river, and it made a lot of sense for us. We lost a lot of enrollment over the years for our Canadian students. So with that adoption, even with the border closed, we saw increases. We are hoping this number, and you can see it, looks like it's skyrocketing here. We barely got into those high schools at the end of the year when the borders opened to start recruiting. We think this number will really expand next year for our Canadian students. But kind of contrary to that, in-state just continues to be a problem for us, and we're down quite a bit on in-state students, 8 to 12%. So more than any of the other categories. And I guess I'll stop there and answer any questions.
Questions for Dr. Placido? Seeing none, I would have to say your presentation was very complete. And now I'd like to call on Rosa to get us back on time, as I'm sure she will, as we discuss the academic and student affairs work plan.
Thank you, Trustee McMahon. You know I can talk really fast. The work plan contains those elements required for governance for the UMS. So, for example, things like the authorization for the awarding of degrees, the annual tenure process, program proposals, etc. And you'll see all of those as holding places on the work plan itself, as well as miscellaneous special topics such as unified accreditation, faculty governance updates. And you will notice, in line with the conversation we just had on enrollment, that we're going to provide regular enrollment updates when appropriate for the ASA meeting. It is intended to be a living document, which will adapt as topical areas are selected for the conversation between the board and faculty, or as the student representatives identify topics of interest, or as the board identifies additional topics they would like to discuss. So it's a very straightforward, very straightforward item. Are there any questions or thoughts of topical areas you would like to see included? And again, it's a living document, so we can absolutely add items along the way. Trustee Alexander.
Yes. How early in the process do we see how burbling up degree programs are presented to this committee?
Dr. Placido, would you like to address that?
I guess I have could you clarify? I'm not sure I understand what you're asking.
So how far, there's a couple ways to ask it. At what point is this committee informed of the development of new degree programs as they are being developed, as my question?
Well, actually, I take your point because it's not until they've been completely vetted and through that entire process, and then they come to you when they're done. And that could be any point in the year, but there wouldn't be there isn't currently a step where we would bring like an intent to plan or we're in development of, unless the provosts take advantage of their annual review that Joe's going to do here shortly to talk about that to you.
I guess
So-
I'd like to add that as a regular update to us, what's going on, what's under development, what the status of various discussions are. And it can be done in a way that doesn't prejudice the ongoing dialogue. Don't get me wrong. I'm not looking for us to insert ourselves as such, but it would be helpful to understand what's coming through the pipeline. So that's one issue I'd like to see on our agenda. And the other one is a more regular discussion of the implementation of unified accreditation as a regular part of our agenda.
Sounds good.
Other questions, suggestions? As Rosa said, this is a living document. We can, we're at liberty to amend.
Great. There, I think we got us back pretty much almost there. And my
Good.
presenters are here for the next part.
Yep, let's go ahead with the presentation on the Adult Learners Comeback campaign, which is a very interesting campaign.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you for the discussion, the ideas related to the work plan. As most of you know, coming out of one of the trustees' strategic imperatives from 2018-2019, we've been putting the pieces in place to better serve and support the many adult learners in Maine who have some or no college. Recent estimates are as many as 185,000 Mainers who do not have some or no college. The many supports needed to bring an adult back are varied and extremely complicated, involving both internal flexibility and the knowledge of external supports that can further help a student come back. Among a long menu of additions and collaborations we've been doing as a part of this initiative, we have 2 scholarships specifically for adult learners. We've implemented a small debt forgiveness program late last year. We've opened a student success center staffed with 2 very talented success coaches who work across all of our campuses, and have expanded the availability of degree completion programs across the system, such as the business program at the University of Maine at Fort Kent and an expansion of CBE at the University of Maine at Presque Isle. All of our campuses have degree completion programs, which are critical elements in the effort to help students complete their degrees. Many of our campuses and the system have been launching comeback campaigns to encourage students with credits already accumulated to return. The flexibility and creativity needed to bring a student to completion can be as complicated as their reasons for leaving in the first place. Today's presentation will highlight 2 programs within the UMS designed to reach out to students with significant credit. One at the University of Maine at Farmington, their Almost Alumni program. I'm going to steal that name, Ashley, I'm just warning you. And the other within the UMS Student Success Center. Donna Seppi, the Director of Student Success Initiatives within the University of Maine system, and Ashley Montgomery, the Assistant Dean for Teaching, Learning, and Assessment at the University of Maine at Farmington, will share information with you about these programs, and there'll be time at the end of the presentation for some dialogue about how we can further support adult learners. So I'm going to turn things over to Donna.
Morning. Thank you, Rosa. I, like Rosa, can speak pretty fast, and I'm sure we can get this back on track for time. I'm just going to share my screen. We have a presentation. I'm going to do it a little bit out of order, but it'll flow a little easier based on Rosa's introduction and kind of move us along. So just bear with me a second while I share my screen. Can everyone see the first page, presentation page? Oh, great. So I'm going to actually, my co-partner Ashley is online too. As Rosa said, I'm Donna Seppi. I'm the Director of Student Success Initiatives for the University of Maine system. And we have been actually operating a Student Success Center. We sort of opened the phone lines and webpage to chat in December of 2020. We were actually for almost a year working to onboard this. And of course, we had COVID, which in March of 20 impacted so much. But yet we still came online in December of 2020. So all the data that you're going to hear is primarily from that time frame, and I'll specify it a little bit. I want to quickly just scooch down to this page here. It's the second slide for those of you that are looking at it. These, Rosa highlighted some of these things. These are some of the areas. This is not an inclusive list, but this is some of the supports and initiatives our system has taken on, that we have taken on in terms of enrollment. We have prior learning assessment. We utilize all of these in our work as part of the Student Success Center that Tessa and Lori and I utilize and work with across our campuses. Our degree completion programs, we'll talk a little bit about that as I have some examples. Our competency-based education degrees and programs, all these retention efforts, make the grade, the advising and course selection meetings that the institutions are doing for their advising, TRIO programs, MEOC, academic forgiveness, Fresh Start programs. We've gone through a ton of these, and I'm not going to read them all because you can see these, but financial initiatives, small debt forgiveness. I'm going to talk a little bit about scholarships, some of these that we have specifically have access to on our part. And then, of course, we have a lot of external resources and partnerships across our state, the tight ones with FAME, DHHS and the HOPE scholarships, Maine competitive skills, higher opportunity, and some fellowships. So we do have a lot of partnerships across the state that we utilize their resources, their ideas a lot, and we reach out and talk to them on a regular basis. So I just wanted to highlight all the things that I know our system is doing, that our Success Center is taking advantage of on a daily basis for the most part. So I'm going to skip back one and talk about our success by the numbers. Again, we started and opened our doors per se in December of 2020. We have had a total of 205 inquiries. This is as of the beginning of the summer. This does not include summer numbers. We have 36, we've helped enroll 36 students since the fall of 21. So again, we had worked a lot in terms of outreach and communications, and letting people know of our existence through COVID, and did a lot of problem solving. But we have helped enroll 36 students just through our Success Center since the fall of 21. We helped, that was in the fall of 21. In the spring of 22, this past year, we supported the enrollment of 51 students across our campuses. And again, we help any campuses, any student, that is referred to us from a variety of places, including the community college system. And I'll talk about some partnerships there as well. We've had 14 verified graduates and having 2 this summer. These are students that we know that have supported through graduation in a variety of ways. So we've had a lot of great success when you look at just the number of contacts and students. Now I know that the 205, hey, you've only talked to 205 people in the last 2 years. That is very misleading because many of our students are very long-term relationships. They take a lot of time and effort to help them solve some of the barriers and challenges to their return, which could be admissions, could be past debt, could be trying to get transcripts from other locations, various other challenges in their personal life, transportation, making sure their credits are being able to be used, looking at those degree completion programs and working with them, with each individual student on what's the best avenue for them. What are their career opportunities? Maybe working with adult ed. So there's a lot of conversation and very detailed, communications and networking that goes into each individual student. So one of the aspects that we have, which many of you have heard before, we have the adult degree completion scholarships. Really excited that we have one addition to our ranks as of just this summer to help continue our efforts and be creative. So far to date, since the fall of 2014, when we had our initial scholarship, we have funded 748 students. That was starting in the spring of 2022. That includes the adult degree completion and our opening doors scholarship, which actually started in the spring of 2025 and has boomed in terms of transfer students. So there was a gap in who was eligible for the adult degree completion scholarship. With the opening doors scholarship, we were able to fill that gap, and we have significantly increased the number of recipients and applications that we've had. And we do, at this point, we are able to fund every single adult student that reaches out and applies that is eligible. And so there is nobody that we turn away because we do not have the funding or availability to support them. And each of these scholarships support them through degree completion. So, you know, we are able to help them out and have a consistent source of funding from this one resource. And of course, we look at all their other financial aid opportunities as well. And so the opening doors, we had initially 60 students. We have had 4 of those students graduate. The adult degree completion, we've had 260 graduates that we've helped support complete their degree since we started that in the fall of 2014. So some of you may have heard last August, it was very much in the middle of the summer as we were starting the new year, we started a new small debt forgiveness program looking at students who had debt that was $2,500 or less, and help them return to school and sort of earn half of that debt back if they enrolled at least part-time or greater over the course of 2 semesters. We've had 1 student complete that. We had initially 5 students enroll for the fall. We've had 1 student complete that. We've had a couple that have dropped out. Unfortunately, 2 that had COVID fell behind in school. We are looking to have them restart in return, but this was of the very start of the program. And then for this fall, we have 13 enrolled for the fall. And that's some pretty significant increase in the number of students that we're able to get back. And they don't have to come up with $2,500 all at once. We're able to have them move forward, still fill financial aid, get some funding and other resources, including some of our scholarships. We're able to collectively look at a variety of resources to make their return beneficial. And then through academic success and supports of advising and other programs, ADA and other programs on our campuses, we're able to support their success and help them achieve removing their past debt in order to continue moving forward toward graduation. And then our newest initiative that we just started in the June of this past year was, let me just go back. So reverse credit transfer is not new to our system with the Maine Community College system at all. We've had that for several years, but in June of this year, we have made a very dedicated effort to support the community college system by doing a campaign of all of our current University of Maine system students. It's only a pilot at the moment. We had 4 students that we identified that are currently University of Maine students that left the Maine Community College system to continue their degree at somewhere in our system and did not finish their degree at the community college, but were super close. And so working with the community college and their new completion degree program, which is a career program, we have been able to reach out to 15 students. 4 reached back out indicating that they were interested, and these 4 have actually been approved and awarded their degrees with the community college. Actually, as of last week, I found out this number too, so that all 4 that we have been working with this summer in collaboration with the community college system have a completed earned degree with the community college and associate's degree that they can put on their credential. And that's without taking any class. And or 1 student had to transfer some of their 2 of their classes back to the community college to finish their degree. And that was, again, easy because they'd already taken the class. So again, that's a stackable credential that they can earn on their way forward in a new partnership, different partnership with the Maine Community College system. With the comeback campaign, we've had several initiatives that have been targeted with campuses. Our first was with UMA through the Holton Center as well, and UMPI. We targeted 300 students. We were able to have 21 students responded. That was pretty lengthy and detailed. We went through each individual student and we reviewed their degree progress reports, their current program of study that they left on, what major their program they left on, and then we looked at the completer degrees to see if they transitioned or changed their program, would they be complete and or would they be closer to completion? And those very individual opportunities, and we were able to move several of those. As you can see, 6 degrees were awarded without any additional credits, and I'll have some examples. And then of course with UMPI, we've had 33 students that we outreach to in the same or similar manner. We had 16 of those students respond, and we've had 3 receive their degrees in the course of the past few months. So let's quickly by the numbers, and I'm just going to go over a couple of examples, which I just want to highlight, and then I'll pass it off to Ashley, and then we can go over any questions. So part of the importance, as Rosa mentioned, for completion, for students to complete their degree, they earn higher wages, they contribute economically to our state. They get higher skilled jobs. It helps measure the quality of our own programs in terms of are we helping students complete their degrees in a timely manner. They are able to use any kind of stranded credits toward the degree programs and the requirements, and not just have debt and no degree. So here are a few examples of some students that we've worked with, and they're going to be a little different on how I'm going to talk about them. So the ones, most of these have degrees completed without any additional courses. So while their circumstances are different, the examples highlight the benefit of the completion. So when looking at these 2 examples of Courtney, she was a 2017 stop out, and Chris, who is a 2016 stop out, both were able to change their programs. Courtney changed from a fine arts degree to a liberal studies degree, and we were able to graduate her from the University of Maine at Augusta in the spring of 2022. And what's important here, and very similar with Chris, and I'm going to talk about Chris because he was recently, just as of a couple weeks ago, is both of them thought they had courses remaining. And what we were able to do, working with faculty, a faculty member in one case, a dean in another case at each institution, we were able to identify their elective courses. And we just made one switch. We took a general elective course with approval, able to make it a humanities or a social science course, and therefore they had a degree. We were not in any way, they didn't have to take any other classes, they didn't have to do anything different. They had a degree already, and all we had to do was review their degree progress report and just swap a class for where it applied. And both were very grateful, and they have their degree in hand. I want to highlight Chris because he was a very difficult situation. This is a gentleman, he's a veteran, long-term veteran. He has debt, established debt with the University of Maine at $3,700, and we were not able to get him his debt low enough when he first reached out, or when we first heard about him, to get him to the $2,500 in order for him to participate in our small debt forgiveness, or get him enrolled in order for him to move forward. And he thought he had 1 class left, and actually he did in his initial degree program. But what we were able to do, and he's having his taxes garnished. So he is repaying the university system. Every year they have been withdrawing his money from his taxes to pay that down. His current balance is $3,700. But what we were able to do only a couple weeks ago is work with faculty at the University of Maine system, work with Amy Line. She is in their Veterans Affairs support, and we were able to get him a degree without having to take another class. So he's still going to be paying his past debt. He now has a degree, a diploma in hand, because UMA is so quick at getting those out, diploma in hand, and now looking for a job, he can have higher revenue moving forward. So I just want to say that took a lot of people and a lot of conversations and problem solving to get to, but that was a success we just had last week. Quickly, and I'll just do these couple other examples. We've had some issues. Some of our stop outs are pretty old, and so they're no longer at the address or the contact that we've had. And so we've been able to, like with Jeremy from UMPI and Eric, he's from UMF, we were able to send communications out, reach out to other people, even within our own communities, our deans and faculty who know students or know parents of students. And we have been able to connect with these students who are no longer in the area or even out of state and help them complete their degree as well. One didn't even realize they hadn't completed. One realized that they thought that they were far from that, and we were able to complete those degrees. I want to highlight two on here that do not.
Donna, do we need to turn, you might want, we're running out of time, so you might want to turn things over to Ashley. Sorry to interrupt, you're on a roll.
No, that's okay. I'm just going to highlight a couple of challenges. If we have time, I'll talk about the students that we haven't been able to resolve, but that's good. So I'll just turn it over to Ashley because she's got several other great examples.
Hi, so maybe a little bit unlike Donna, as somebody at a campus, I started doing this work because the pandemic was really hard. And I needed something to work on that wasn't struggling students and struggling faculty. I needed a little bit of a distraction. And so I knew that two people in town that I know very well had not finished their degrees at UMF. And so that prompted me to reach out to Rosa because I knew Rosa from other committees and things. And she was great. And she connected me with an initial stop out report that Bob Zerker had generated. And I took a look at it, and the number 631 stop out sort of stopped me in my tracks. And I thought, oh, good Lord, I don't have that much time. And so what I decided to do was maybe focus on people that had a high number of credit hours completed and that were not in financial arrears, and that I could see a path for them to graduation that was fairly close. And so I rebranded it Almost Alumni because I didn't like the name Stop Out. I'll be honest with you. I had initially quite a bit of success because it was things like programs had changed, program requirements had changed. It was easy to shift some credit around, get some waivers, and get things to line up to help somebody with minimal effort complete their degree. You've got photos of a couple of folks I've worked with on here. I just want to first highlight the student in the upper right. This is Melissa. Melissa's actually been interviewed several places about her experience with her daughter, Mia. She's now working on her MBA. When I asked Melissa, when I told her I was going to be participating in this meeting, and I said, what do you think is like something really important to convey about how this work can be a successful experience for the university, but also for the Almost Alumni? And she talked about the feeling of being seen, that when she and I connected, she felt like I was not there to shame her for not finishing her degree, because that she held a lot of shame about that. That I was present, and that the other folks on campus that she worked with wanted to help her expedite the process to get her degree. And so she said, you know, that feeling of being seen and being heard and being offered support. And last on this slide, I want to highlight is a quote from Jean Doty, who was a really integral faculty member at UMF. She's a professor of biology, and she was also, and still is, the chair of general ed. And she really kind of gave me this quote, which has sort of been key to this project for me, and that we have to balance academic integrity with common sense. Because if we, Dawn, if we can move to the next slide, I'll highlight a couple of people and it'll give you an idea, sort of the significance of that quote. The first one is Will. Will was, he left in 2019. He was a creative writing major. He had 128 credits, which at UMF under the 4-credit system was what he needed, but he was missing a requirement. And in his major, they required intermediate proficiency in a second language. He studied Chinese. And at the time, the Chinese program fell apart, and he wasn't going to go start another language. And so he just he walked at graduation, but he didn't finish up. And so I reached out to the chair of the humanities department and said, hey, he has 128 credits. He's met all the requirements except for this one. By the way, did you know in high school he studied in China on exchange? Waiver, done. President Cerna handed the diploma to Will right after graduation. He was interning at a brewery down the street. Vanessa left in 2000. She was an elementary ed major. She was on the verge of student teaching, and some unplanned life circumstances. She got married, had several children, and moved out of state, and she just thought it wasn't an option. She just finished up in the spring. And what she wanted, what got her to come back and take the classes online through UMF rather than through the local community college in Georgia where she's at, was that we offered her the in-state rate. As a former in-state student, President's Council here passed that any student who was an in-state student, if they wanted to come back, could stay at the in-state rate for up to 32 credits. So she took 2 classes, did really well in them, and now she's looking at graduate programs. John is in progress right now. He left in 2000. He is doing a combination of PLA and took his first class in 20 plus years. He took a business class in May term with Wallach Dalpor and did really well. And now he and Wallach are working together based on John's work experience as a manager in business through the PLA process to complete the remaining credit. And then the last one, Lorenzo, is really an open book. And I invite you, if you have ideas for how I can help Lorenzo finish. He's fascinating. He left in 2007. He had 112 credits. He basically blew off his last semester and a half of school. He ended up leaving for Alaska. He worked as a bar manager in Sitka, Alaska, and then saved up his money and ended up traveling around South America for 3.5 years till his money ran out, and is now a chef in New Orleans. He got interested in finishing his degree because of the pandemic, because he volunteered with a social services program to help support hospitality workers. And he wants to go to law school now. So the options we've looked at, we have a liberal studies degree that he could do with minimal effort because he's met all the requirements for a sociology, anthropology concentration for that major. We've looked at bachelor's of general studies, which is the path some of our students have taken because it's the most broad option. We've looked at prior learning assessment for the experiences he's had. We've talked about maybe seeing if we could finagle something with some retroactive CLEP exams for foreign language, given that he was living and working in South America for a number of years. We've looked at community colleges in New Orleans. So those are a couple of folks I've worked with at Farmington. Thank you.
So now what we'd like to do is open it up for any questions, or I think we all know adult learners in our lives who have some college and never finished. As you think about friends and colleagues and family members you may have, what are the kinds of challenges they face and perhaps going back, and how can we structure ourselves in the way to best support and serve them?
Thank you
Any
for the
questions?
presentation. Questions?
I just want to say I wish everyone could hear this presentation, because I think a lot of times people assume we're the big universities, the big system, and faculty may see students, or residence life staff may see students and their stories, but this is really impressive, and I just want to say thank you. It was a very inspiring presentation to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Kane. Any other questions or comments or feedback? Then I'm going to close with just one last thought. When we bring students back and help them achieve their dream, we're in the business of transforming lives. And when you think about the average adult learner who has had so many stops along the way, when they come back and we can be flexible and creative and really think forward about how to help them, in fact, transform their life, there's probably nothing more empowering. And when I look at the work that Ashley's done, our Student Success Center have done, and so many others at our campuses, yes, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of contact. I put in the chat some national statistics on just how many times you have to touch a student and as part of the experience for them to really commit. It's a lot of work, but it's at the end of the day, it's worth it for themselves, their communities, and their futures. So that's it for me. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you. Trustee Riley had a question. You on mute, Trish.
I did, and I'm looking at the chat box. I agree. This is very exciting work, and I think it's very creative work to meet students where they are. It's a very important part of a public institution. I do think it's very expensive, and our budget issues are of concern. So at a later date, maybe an ROI, because it looks like the scholarships have some bigger capacity to hit, but of course you've got to get students to that point. So
Yeah, exactly.
it would be interesting to think about how to make this as efficient and effective, but it's a very exciting prospect.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Very good presentation, Rosa. Well, thank you, colleagues, as well.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you to Ashley and Donna.
So next item on the agenda is the first reading of policy 315, naming of academic units. Ellen Doughty.
Yes, thank you. This particular agenda item is being presented as an information item. It's a new Board of Trustee policy that came out of a request from a campus last year. They wanted to name a new academic unit, and we did not have a policy for them to follow. So at that time, Chair Gardner requested a small group get together to develop a draft policy and then filled it out for different constituencies for feedback. This is the result of that work. It is a work in process. We've had broad stakeholder input in it so far. It is now ready for your review and input. After this committee reviews it, it would go to the Board of Trustees meeting in September for review, then back to this committee in October for approval, and then back to the board meeting in November for final approval. So I welcome any input and suggestions either today or feel free to email me.
Ellen, may I add?
Absolutely.
Just want to say that Ellen and her team brought this to all the, since it's academic in nature, brought this to all the academic groups, and we brought this to the Faculty Governance Council and the provosts, and they've all had a chance to review and approve. You'll notice that it's very much in line with our facilities naming document, which a group worked on for quite a long time. And the whole point of this is that we're being thoughtful in whose name goes on to something that we then use in the future. And it wasn't too long after that policy had been created, as Ellen said, that USM said, hey, we want to name a program, and the other policy doesn't specifically allow that. It was just for buildings. So Ellen's group, I think appropriately so, said, let's just create a separate one. So if right now it looks very similar, but in the future, we want to have a nuance between the facility one and the academic one. We could, and that's why they're separated.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I was on that other committee and I didn't have time before this morning to do a side-by-side, but I was very confused about why we needed a separate thing rather than just making the other one say facilities, academic programs, etc. Because I don't think we should in any way have different standards for whether and how we name things. That should not, to me, there's no, when it's naming something, it's naming something. So I was actually concerned when I saw there's a whole separate policy, because what that to me says is in the future, our future selves, you know, when it was not so in the recent past, that there was a separate policy conversation about the naming, which we did a lot of national benchmarking on and making sure we were being consistent. Like, I don't understand why we need a separate one for academic. Why can't we have one policy for naming things, period? It just seems to me that it's ripe for things to get off track if they are in separate places, when I can't imagine why we would ever have different standards for naming things.
That was one issue that we struggled with. In fact, we started to amend, excuse me, the naming of the physical facilities first and adding this to it. It became very complicated because there would be different groups that would be involved in the review process for academic naming versus buildings. So therefore, we decided to separate them out because of the review process for both groups.
So that's a really good point, I think, but that the question then is, we don't actually need different criteria for naming. We may need a different process. And that's what I think we need to make sure, I see in here, you know, there's a criteria section, but we want to make sure, to me, that those are identical about the criteria for naming, rather than maybe the process for approval or who signs off, because I do appreciate that the academic side may be different than the facility side, but the criteria itself should not differ a word or a punctuation mark. And I think I really just want to make sure those two things don't live in two separate places, because if they do, that's how we're going to end up in trouble with our future selves.
Yep, we agree. And they are in alignment. In fact, we did find some missing links in the naming of physical facilities policy that we should have corrected. And that is actually going to the FFT committee to make sure that these two policies are in alignment.
Okay, I guess if we're going to have two policies, we should just make sure they reference each other to make sure they don't get out of sync. That's just the flag.
Other questions or comments? As Ellen said, this is for information at this stage. And I'm assuming you take feedback from trustees at any time, Ellen.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Okay, seeing no other questions or comments. The next item is executive session. Could I have a motion for the Board of Trustees meeting to go into the executive session under the provisions of 1 MRSA section 40568 to discuss the evaluation of personnel and the consideration and discussion of appointments, evaluations, employment and duties. 1 MRSA section 4056C to discuss the condition, acquisition, or disposition of real property or economic development if premature disclosure of the information would prejudice the competitive or bargaining position of the UMS.
So moved.
Moved by trustee Kane. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by trustee Alexander. Could you take a roll call vote, please, Ellen?
Certainly. Trustee Alexander?
Yes.
Trustee Kane?
Yes.
Trustee Ames?
Yes.
Trustee McMahon?
Yes.
And Trustee Riley?
Yes.
The motion is carried.
Let's see if she's gonna let me in. She's not gonna let me in.
Trustee McMahon, we can't see you. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, for some reason Zoom's not responding. We have one action in public session. Vice Chancellor Placido, do you need to introduce this?
Yes, I'll do it quickly since we've already reviewed it in detail. The Chancellor and appropriate University of Southern Maine academic administrators are requesting and recommending consideration of tenure at the rank of professor for Dr. Jacqueline Edmondson in the Department of Literacy, Language, and Culture in the School of Education and Human Development in the College of Management and Human Services. Tenure would be effective upon the Board of Trustees approval on the date she assumes a full-time faculty position upon the conclusion of her administrative appointment. I have reviewed the request and also concur, and I'm honored to present this to you today. I am seeking your approval.
It looks like we've lost Trustee McMahon. Trustee Riley, do you want to
Sure.
continue just so we can continue on?
Sure. Do I have a motion to approve the tenure recommendation for President Edmondson?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Moved and seconded by Emily and Barbara, and we need to take the roll.
Yes. Oh, good. He's back. I was going to say we have a problem if David's not with us. Trustee Riley has the motion on the floor, and we were just about to take a roll call for the motion. Trustee McMahon.
Good.
Do we need to read the resolution, Ellen?
Sure. Shall I read it?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. That the Academic and Student Affairs Committee forwards this item to the September 11th and 12th, 2022 Board of Trustees meeting for approval of the following resolution. That the Board of Trustees accepts the recommendation of the Academic and Student Affairs Committee and approves the granting of the rank of professor with tenure to be effective upon full board approval to Dr. Jacqueline Edmondson, and that Dr. Edmondson has the right to return to the University of Southern Maine faculty with the rank of professor with tenure in the Department of Literacy, Language, and Culture upon conclusion of her service as the University of Southern Maine president.
So moved.
We already have the motion on the floor, but thank you.
Okay, so we're ready for roll call?
We are. Trustee Alexander.
Yes.
Trustee Kane.
Yes.
Trustee Ames.
Yes.
Trustee McMahon.
Yes.
Trustee Riley.
Yes.
The motion is carried.
Thank you all. I apologize for running over with them. Have a good day.